Sup nerds, I'm CuppaJoey and welcome back to another episode of r/Am I the Anthropomorphized Anal Wind? You should know the drill by now. People are gonna give us stories of their social conflicts and then we're gonna be the ones to decide whether or not they were the butthole in this situation. So I hope you've got your gavel and your judge wigs on, let's get a crack on with it. Am I the anal fart boy for not inviting my friend's girlfriend to my wedding? So I, male 25, have a friend, Jake, also male 25. Or a strip of motorway around London, either or. He is fun, but not very assertive. We occasionally have a beer together, and we would also go to strip clubs before he got himself a girlfriend, Lucy, female 23. Lucy is weird. She likes to jab verbally at Jake. She always says it's in good spirit and he jabs verbally back, but I've never seen him do such a thing. She likes to call him her slave. For example, she gives him her bag and tell him, take it like a good gentleman, slave. He never complains and obliges, but I feel like she's taking it too far. When they play games together, she calls him stupid and laughs. I decided that I don't want her at my wedding. I invited only Jake, but he called me and asked me if there was an invite for Lucy. I said no. He asked if our other friend's girlfriend will be there, and I said yeah, she will, because she isn't toxic. But Jake was really upset, asking me why, because they're together for a long time, 2 years, and he wants to marry her. I told him he would be freaking stupid to marry her, and he should reconsider the relationship. He hanged the call, and now is not responding to me. So, am I the butthole? He apparently considers me the butthole. We never once had a dispute before Lucy came, and now my fiancé also tells me that I've overstepped, and I don't know what happens in other people's relationships. She thinks Lucy is a good person and treats Jake well. Huh? So before I give my own commentary, I'm just going to read out one of the comments on here because it sums up a lot really well. I think you really fricked up in approaching it this way. You leave her off the invitation, forcing him to call and ask for clarification, and then drop the bomb that she isn't invited and that you dislike her? That was a terrible way to handle it. You should have just talked to him privately beforehand about your concern. You've just made yourself look awful, and you've made Lucy look like a victim. You're driving him away from you and making him defensive about his relationship. So, just a little disclaimer, of course it is at the discretion of the brides, or groom/grooms to decide who they want to their wedding. First of all, just my opinion from what we've seen. Now, we do need to take all this with a nice tablespoon of salt because we are just hearing this from OP's perspective. First of all, he said, we occasionally have a beer together and we would also go to strip clubs before he got himself his girlfriend. Now, first of all, whenever there are guys that go to strip clubs, I'm always like, man, there's something not right here. I am 100% all supportive of sex work, that's fine. If you want to go and visit a sex worker for your own reasons, then yeah, fine. But, to go and leer at these women with your friend in that kind of vibe, I do get I get the feeling that this guy doesn't respect women at all. So I think that there is a good chance that he is demonizing Lucy way more than she deserves. It seems that his main concern is the gentle jostling between them, oh, she calls him a slave. Sometimes people do that in relationships. My fiancé calls me a swamp bastard when I fart. It's just something that, couples do, have their kind of jokey insults that aren't serious. It feels like this guy has kind of misogynistic tendencies, and he is now projecting that onto Lucy. That's the major vibe that I get from this. Yeah, so I would agree with the verdict on this one. I would say butthole, just based on the on the misogynistic vibes I'm getting. Because let's face the truth. People on Am I the Butthole? They are gonna be making the other party look worse, because they want some kind of justification that they're not as bad as they think they are. So if this is him trying to make Lucy look even worse, then she's probably not that bad at all. And yeah, that was a really, harsh way to go about it, just, kind of not let him and not have a word about what concerns you may have. If he was really concerned and not just trying to be a prick, then he would have mentioned it before. And if he loses his friendship with Jake over this, well, that's completely on him. Am I the sentient fart for refusing to apologise to my sister-in-law after she was rude during my daughter's birthday dinner? I, 39 male, lost my wife earlier this year, then my job was affected by the pandemic. My daughter just turned 13 and knows we're not doing the best financially. My job picked back up thankfully, but we don't have a lot of extra money yet. For my daughter's birthday, I invited my parents, brother, and he invited sister-in-law to have a small dinner with us over the weekend. I really tried to make it enjoyable for my daughter. I made her favourite meal, spaghetti with my wife's meat sauce recipe, a copycat Olive Garden salad and dressing, and homemade garlic bread. I then was able to get a few small gifts for her. I even made a small cake. It was iced atrociously, but I tried. I have never liked my sister-in-law. She looks down at our family and she was always awful to my wife. Still, I'm usually able to be civil to her. We ate, and my dad wanted my daughter to open her gifts. I'm thrilled because while it wasn't much, she seemed very happy about what she received from my parents and myself. My sister-in-law made snarky comments during dinner and gift opening, which I could tell irritated my daughter. Afterwards, my parents left, and my daughter went to FaceTime my wife's parents. My sister-in-law stalked into the kitchen and started berating me about being cheap for her birthday and then saying, "What would your wife think?" I shouldn't have, and I admit I completely lost my temper, but I was so angry I told her my wife would be thrilled I managed to pull something together, including ignoring her snotty comments all night. But considering she showed up completely empty-handed and had no problem shoving her mouth full of the food I made and criticising everyone who did make an effort, she didn't have any room to be calling anyone cheap. She ran to my brother crying and they left in a huff. My parents called saying my brother was saying I was rude to his wife and ruined the night. I told them what happened and they are angry at my sister-in-law and my brother now. My brother is still blaming me and is now having a fit because I said she wasn't welcome in my home again, and if that meant not seeing him, so be it. My brother says I should apologise for being a butthole to keep the peace, but my dad says stick to my guns and she doesn't deserve an apology. I do not plan to apologise, but am I the butthole for it? Too long didn't read. Am I the butthole for making my sister-in-law cry after telling her off after she'd been rude all night during my daughter's birthday? None of you should be surprised to learn that the verdict in this is overwhelmingly not the butthole. So this story was only posted 10 hours ago as of me reading this, and you can probably see the little screenshot. I'm shocked. I just think that it's really shocking that the sister-in-law would consider this remotely acceptable behaviour. Like, what kind of snobbery levels do you have to get through to think that making a cut about somebody's wife, who they lost, earlier this year, so not even a year ago, to think that that kind of behaviour is remotely acceptable? And not only that, but to expect an apology. Also completely unacceptable is the behaviour of the brother, the fact that he would side with his wife over her, gross behaviour is really, really quite horrible. You're supposed to look after your brothers, not, allow them to be abused on their daughter's birthday using their late wife as a weapon. That's just wrong. So, as often happens at the end of these Am I the Butthole, I do have a very, very, very similar experience to this. Painfully similar, actually. Little bit of CuppaJoey backstory. I lost my mother 5 days after my 12th birthday. Bang on it. You remember when it's like that. And my father was in his early 40s. My mother was in her early 40s when he passed. So my father had to deal with the grief of losing his wife and then the pressure of raising 2 kids on his own. Bearing in mind, you may be looking at me and thinking, oh god, this guy didn't turn out alright, but, I'm very, very close to my father. He did an amazing job, and I do feel lucky to have him. Now, the situation that's similar to this, in order for you to understand a little bit of backstory, my father had quite a difficult time growing up. If this will only really make sense, this next bit will only really make sense if you're British, I think, but it's very bizarre in that all of my family, my paternal family, are from Yorkshire, and as you may be able to tell from my accent, I'm not. Now, my grandfather moved down to Kent. My father was born in Kent. I was born in Hampshire. So we very much were from the south of England. Yet, my grandfather had this weird obsession with Yorkshire being better than everyone, and as a result, my father would be taken up to Yorkshire a few times every year, and bullied relentlessly for the fact that he wasn't like them over things like accent, the kind of foods that he wasn't interested in. There were, loads of different things. He as a child would go up and be bullied by adults and older kids as well. Kids that were, nearly 10 years older than him when he was about 6, okay? So the relationship has always been a little bit strained. Now, getting on to the relevant part about how this kind of relates to the story with the sister-in-law and, her making that horrible comment. I wasn't originally going to name names, but after speaking to my dad, he said that he doesn't care. So, this is regarding my second cousin, Marion, who is my father's first cousin. It was her that made the horrible comment in this little story. In order to understand it, you'll have to know all of my family is white. However, on my dad's side, my dad tans really well. When he goes out into the sun, he brown, and I'm really, really jealous because I inherited my mother's skin, which means that I go out into the sun and red, okay? I can't tan. When I was in China for a year in the freaking Tropic of Cancer, I came back like I'd spent a weekend in Spain, I can't tan. It sucks. I hate how white I am, but so be it. Which, is the exact same kind of skin that my mother had. I remember when she was alive and I was very young, it was me and her that were having to put on a load of sun cream, and my father was generally alright with a lower factor. I'm going to set the scene for you. This situation took place at my grandmother's funeral, okay? So this was my father's mother. So we had to go from the south of England up to Yorkshire, so it's about a 5-hour drive. To attend this funeral, it really frustrates me just thinking about the whole thing. But bearing in mind, my father was there for his own mother's funeral, and his cousin was there for his auntie with whom she shared no blood relation and barely spoke to as it was. We were at the tiny little wake thing, which was just a small catering thing in the community thing. I was, basically trying to be the best emotional support I could be. I mean, I was grieving my grandmother. My grandmother she was weird, but I liked her. She wasn't the most gentle of people, but, I could appreciate her for who she was. So, I was grieving, my father was grieving, and then as a nasty joke, Marion, and bearing in mind, this has the backstory of her constantly bullying constantly bullying my father as a child when she is considerably older than him, right? She came over to us, and then as a joke to try and laugh at us, to, cheer up the wake, she said to my father, "Why are you so brown and your kids so white? Are they not yours?" Now, if you see a photo of me, my brother, and my father side by side, you can tell that we are all definitely his. I look a lot like my dad, okay? Apart from my brother who got my mum's nose, every other part of us, we basically got dad's face, So you wouldn't look at us and doubt that we were related, but she tried to say that as a kind of a joke, I know how to lighten the funeral. I will suggest that the grieving son's late wife cheated on him. Which, of course, when you're grieving, is an incredibly hurtful thing to hear. I remember I was just shocked at the time. It was really, really disgusting. But the worst part of that is because of my grandfather's pure obsession with Yorkshire and seeing Yorkshire as better than everything, and seeing, for some reason, that side of his family is better than the ones he forced to be born in the south. He essentially refused to admit that she had done anything wrong and would even gaslight my dad, saying that he was daft, and then later said, "Oh no, I wasn't saying you were daft," even though he just said that. So when I read this story, I really, really did connect to it on an emotional level because I've been that level of cruelty around grief, and it's absolutely despicable. The fact that it isn't even a year, bear in mind, Marion made that comment about my mother, well over 10 years after she died, and it was still incredibly hurtful, especially as it was at a funeral, Anyway, unsurprisingly, my father told Marion that he didn't want anything to do with her, and even told his father, look, you need to make it clear to that side of the family, I really don't want to have to deal with anything, because it's really, really horrible to try and make a low blow against somebody's late wife at their mother's funeral. But my grandfather just, he refuses to accept anything's wrong. And whenever we go over there, he will randomly bring up, like, oh, did you hear about Marion? She's doing this lovely thing. She does look after her mother, you know, and, like, clearly try to bring her up in subtle ways for us to go, oh, isn't she lovely? And it's really frustrating. So the one good thing about this story is that the dad of OP is actually saying, don't put up with that crap, stick to your guns, and don't accept her back in your life. I would 100% stay with that. I think that he is right in saying no contact, because let's face it, who is more important here? Keeping the peace with the sister-in-law or the mental well-being of his daughter? When you are a teenager, it is a very, very delicate time, especially if you have just experienced a loss. You know, I'm just going to be completely frank, experiencing a loss that young completely messes you up. It kind of dominates your life after that. You see death everywhere, and it's genuinely... I mean, this is supposed to be a comedy channel, what am I doing? Okay, I'm not going to be so deep, but just, you know, the welfare of this guy's daughter is way more important than the sensitivities of some snotty twat who thinks that she can be judgmental about... How much money he has spent on a freaking birthday party. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that the daughter enjoyed herself. She enjoyed the food and the presents, and honestly, something that tiny and low-key is exactly what I would have wanted for my 30th birthday as well. Yeah, I mean, even if the OP in this case was, like, a lot ruder and a lot harsher to his sister-in-law, he still wouldn't have been the butthole. If you enjoy watching my content, then please consider throwing me a few pennies down at my Ko-fi down below. If you would like to just buy me a coffee, you can throw me as little as £3 down below. If not, thanks for just enjoying my content, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, that wraps things up for this episode of r/Am I the Butthole? So you know what to do now. Get in that comment section and let me know, did you think that these people were buttholes? Did you agree with what I had to say, or do you think that we've not heard enough about the situation? And as I say at the end of every episode, if you enjoyed hearing from this subreddit or would like to hear from any other subreddit, then do let me know in the comments. And until then, I will see you all next time.